There you go. Merlin hawking in California. That's what we're going to talk about. So, my name's Rob. I grew up in Ontario, Canada, where trapping passage birds was illegal. So when I moved to California, I was excited to try a passage bird of any kind. I used to fly goshawks, primarily in Canada. And so when I moved, I thought, I want to get a Cooper's hawk and try a passage coops. When I got the passage coops, it did not work out well. It was garbage. I was struggling with it. I was trying to get it to chase sparrows, and one day I was out hunting sparrows, and I had waves of sparrows flushing in front of me, and my Cooper's hawk blasted off my fist, and I got all excited thinking this was the day I was going to catch this sparrow finally. But when I got up to it, it was eating a bowl. And as I was looking at it in disgust and disappointment, a female merlin came blasting over my shoulder and sucked up a sparrow and a plume of feathers. And I thought, okay, I gotta get a merlin. So I reached out to my friend Dave Rob, who's sitting over there, and he put me in touch with some eccentric merlin guy named Keith Richman. Oh yeah, sorry. And then I got my first merlin in 2009, trapped by Chris Allen with help from Joe Salem and Dale Harrison. So thanks, Chris or Joe. It's here. So we will focus on flying jacks, and those who don't know, a jack merlin is what we call a male merlin. We're going to try to communicate to you why merlins are so special to us. I'll give a brief update on merlins in California, and then Keith will provide some insights on his many decades of trapping, training, and hunting jacks. And then we'll share some stories of special birds and special friends we've made along the way. So why merlins? They're fantastic pursuit predators. They can take off from the ground and overpower a small bird already cruising past. They can chase a bird up into the sky and out of sight. They show incredible feats of agility. They're also easily trained. They usually eat off the fisk within the first day and are sometimes free flying within a couple weeks. They are extremely loyal. They often come back looking for you after they've been chased away or they spent the night out. They'll come back looking for you. And there's always lots of game for them. It's easy to find. And falconers can often fly the same slip. They can take turns flying the same slip, so it lends itself to a more gregarious type of hawking. And it's fun. I mean, look at Chris. Here's an example. This is a clip I found. It was going around the internet recently. Some of you might have seen it. It's an example of a wild merlin. I think it might be in England, or maybe it's an island. I don't know. But here's it.
Wow! Well done, Nick.
Good luck next time. Our birds always fly like that, by the way. So here are the merlins that we get in California: the black or suplei, the taiga or columbarius merlin, and then the prairie or Richmond's merlin. I won't get into too much detail. I know Bruce Hack did his talk last night, so he probably covered this in a lot of detail. This is the breeding range of the merlins that we get. So you can see the suplei are in the Pacific Northwest, breeding up in Alaska, down along the British Columbia coast, and then up into northern Washington. The columbarius occurs along the boreal forest zone of Canada. And then the Richardsons live in the prairie regions. So the columbarius are the most widely spread species. They're the ones that we typically trap most often. So if you're wondering why we have a columbarius and why it's so nice and easy to work with, it's likely because it's Canadian. And for all of you out of towners, this is where we are here. There's some people from England, maybe some other places. And Canada. Shout out to my dad, who's visiting from Canada. Here's some examples of some Suclei Merlins. These are two jacks that I flew, Little Ant and Sebastian. And here is my old sponsor, Big Ant, who I named that bird after. We trapped this female Suclei in Washington. It was sitting in a parking lot. And this was in 2020. Here's another photo of BB. That was that female. I flew her for one season. There's a tree of Merlins. You won't see this in California. These are recently fledged birds out of nest territory in Washington. And I've been going up there for the past few years to trap soarhawks, so birds that have recently fledged the nest but are still being taken care of by their parents. You can go up and trap them, and it's been a lot of fun doing that. Here's another young jack coming into a Delgaza. He was coming in pretty hot, so it's kind of blurry. And then here's Rudy, which is a young jack that I trapped a couple seasons ago. He was trapped on a BC. I don't necessarily recommend trapping Merlins with a BC, just because trapping passage Merlins, the passage birds come in really fast and hard when they see a bait bird, but the young soarhawks will sometimes flutter down. They're a little more gentle when they come in. So here's some more. Here's some photos of some Columarius Merlins. Your standard brown jack, as we like to refer to them. Or otherwise known as the Canadian one. I'm just adding that right now. I refer to it as the Canadian one. I'm just trying to get my American friends. Here's Oppie, a brown jack that I flew. He really liked doves. He's got a dove right there. I found him in some thick bushes with his dove. Boomer dove. Here's another jack that I flew. His name was Danny. And then there's my good buddies Tony and Mike in the background after a successful hunt. So here's Max. So at the time I was in between Merlins, I kind of dabbled with some larger falcons. We all make mistakes now and again. I'm currently making the same. I won't call it a mistake, that's a good word right now. But anyway, I was in between Merlins. I had a red-naped Shaheen, and then we have what's called Black Friday. Is that what we call it, Tony?
Oh, yeah.
Black Friday, yeah, where I flew my red-naped Shaheen. I was flying into the drone, and I was flying with the drone, and I lost the red-naped Shaheen, the drone, my new GPS, my new turbo transmitter to the Pacific. They all ended up in the Pacific. But there was a silver lining. I went out trapping in Lancaster and ended up with this beautiful brown jack named Max, and he brought me back to Merlins. Here's some more pictures of Max. He was a naturally high-flying Merlin. Didn't need any drones or anything. He would just go up, just all by himself. He just loved flying high. And I flew him for about 4 seasons. He eventually died by chasing a bird into a sewage lagoon. It was pretty shitty. Anyway, I'm still looking for my next Max. So yeah, the standard brown jack here, you can see it's the most common one we have. There's a group comparing our Merlin sizes. I'm not sure if it's a this one, but all right, now pizza.
Sure.
Just want to remind everybody, if you want to come see the lure flying competition, which is amazing, tomorrow at 7:30, we're all going to meet over at the Weathering Yard. If you're signing up for the lure flying competition, the sign up is right there. The competition is fierce this year, but first place gets $500, second place gets $300, and third place gets $200, which comes out of my pocket. Well, not really mine, my boss's, but You get money. So if you're gonna sign up right there, and definitely if you wanna come and watch, it's amazing to watch. Thanks.
Where is it?
It's about 11 minutes from here, so just meet at 7:30 at the weathering yard.
Howdy folks, my name is Keith. I'm a wing meat junkie. Started Merlins in '92. A great falconer named Michael Craigo took me under his wing and showed me how to trap them, and got my first one. And I haven't looked back since. It's been some really fun times for me. This is Pandora, a little Sharpie that I flew for a long time. 7 seasons with her. She caught a whole bunch of stuff, and people ask me about getting into Merlins, and I tell them, well, you probably would want to get a Sharpie first and fly one for a few years, and just to learn the lay of the land, get your little dicky bird legs under you. So, because with a Sharpie, what's nice about it is you can walk around in a field with a little hawk on your hand and a stick in the other, and you don't have to produce a bird like you would like for a waiting on falcon. There's no pressure. As a matter of fact, the longer you wait between flushes, the more wound up the little Sharpie gets, so that when you finally do flush, where they just explode after it with a lot of energy. So it's like every time you take a step, that little Sharpie bumps his little head like that, and every time it bobs his head with each step, it winds the spring a little tighter. So it's good to get them reloaded and get them all excited. And the good thing is you're learning where all the little birds are out there, what bushes have what kind of birds. They're all very habitat specific. So you'll learn what's out there. And then armed with that information, you take on a little waiting on falcon, then you know where to find this stuff, so that when you let your falcon go, you can walk out and be reasonably assured that you know that you can actually flush birds under it in a timely fashion. Because once the falcon's in the air, the meter's ringing, it's running, and you gotta be able to produce. Otherwise that bird's just gonna fly away and find something better to do. Okay, so this is a little Barbary Tearsel named Boomer. I flew him for 6 years. Great little falcon for California, especially where it's warm. Barbary falcons, they don't have any down on them, so they handle heat real well. And 60 degrees for a Barbary is like 40 degrees for a regular falcon. And they're great birds for the Sun Belt, and everything from snipe and doves and starling-sized birds all the way down to sparrows. And they're real fast flyers, and they scoop really quick, and they have wonderful personalities, and I just love them to death. So this is Boomer. They've got a real long, narrow wing and a short, stubby tail, real stiff feathers. And they gotta beat the wings really fast in order to stay in the air, otherwise they just fall out of the sky. As soon as they start to glide, they fall because they're so heavy in the wing. And that's Boomer over there with a dove. And that was an interesting slip. Out here in the valley, you'll see little falcons waiting on over marsh hawks, over harriers. And the harriers are flying around in the alfalfa, they're scaring up birds, and the little merlins are waiting on above them, chasing the birds that the harriers are flushing. You see it all the time. Some merlins fly in a low figure-8 lure flying pattern and attacking, kind of the birds that the marsh hawk is flushing. And some of them wait on very high, sometimes 200-300 feet, with these beautiful straight vertical stoops. They go straight up on their tail when they miss, and they look like a little peregrine. One morning when we were out with the guys, and we'll talk about who these guys are later, but we were driving along, and Dave Salem was with us too. We were driving, there was a female merlin waiting on over a marsh hawk. It was working it. And it was doing the low kind of lure flying pattern. And the marsh hawk was kind of flying around and gliding around and wasn't scaring up birds because it wasn't flying with an aggressive enough wing beat. So the merlin came in and whacked the marsh hawk on the butt, that white rump patch on the base of their tail. He came in and smacked it, and then all of a sudden the marsh hawk started flapping his wings really fast, like, hey, whoa, hey, what's going on here? And then when he got that more aggressive wing beat, then the sparrows started flushing, and the merlin was happy and started chasing sparrows. And then as we're driving along, then the merlin starts doing some more, and then the marsh hawk starts to slow down and glide around, and the merlin comes in and whacks it on the butt. And the marsh hawk starts flying really crazy again, the sparrows start flushing. We just watch this thing go for half a mile as we're driving through the farmlands looking for slips for our birds. Okay. So this is Squid, and he's sitting on a little pole perch. Now Squid was a little columnarius jack that I trapped about 8 years ago and flew him for 8 years, and he was a very high vibration Merlin. He was the kind of bird that for the first 2 or 3 years of his life, he would sit down on his perch and grip the perch and just beat his wings like a hummingbird all the time, trying to lift his perch up off the ground. And he flew like it. And he had a very unique wing beat. He flew with his wings tucked in tight most of the time. So, and he flew very high, hundreds of feet, and would just circle around and kind of reach his wings forward and snap them shut. But not just with one wing beat, but every time he opened his wings and closed it, if you look carefully, it was like many wing beats, and he would kind of pulse and squirt himself around. So most of the time when you saw him, he looked like a little torpedo, like he was scooping. So you couldn't tell if he was scooping or if he was flying straight. It's a very interesting bird. And luckily we had him for a long time. We got to enjoy him for many years. So this is Herb Sparks. Now Herb Sparks back in the 70s wrote the seminal pieces on how to train passage merlins. And it's in the book called Game Hawking at its Very Best by Frank Beebe. And so Herb wrote the chapter called The Passage Merlin, which is the foundation for how we train merlins in California. So whenever anybody asks me about what to read, I send them a copy of this. And that's a good foundational piece to work from. And then once you learn how to do it that way, then you can cut corners and try some other techniques to kind of shave off a few days here or a week there. But you have a basic framework to work from so that you've got some corners to cut, Anyways, Herb's a wonderful guy. He's a great falconer, really passionate and adamant, still flying merlins today. I met him when I was 13 in like 1970. And, just hardcore guitar player, passionate little Merlin flyer, micro hawker. And when I look back at why I am the way I am, I think I got it pretty good on Herb. Okay, so let's see here. Oh, when we attach our telemetry, we put it above the cuff on a buoy, or you can put it on the second cuff and attach it with a zip tie. And we found that when you get the transmitter up above, up closer to their knee or their elbow, that it doesn't pull on their foot so bad when they're at the bottom of their stoops, because they stoop really hard and snap and do these hairpin moves that are just, you can't even believe how fast they turn. And there's so much G-force on their feet that to have the transmitter hanging off the ankle pulls too hard on their feet, and it bothers them, so they start softening their moves at the bottom of their stoops because of the transmitter. We found out by putting it up higher, traditional style, it doesn't pull on them so much. Imagine being a kickboxer with a 5-pound weight on your ankle as opposed to one at your knee. So we found that with getting the transmitter up off their anklet reduces the amount of incidences of wild merlins trying to steal this transmitter from the trained merlin, and it also makes it so the merlins fly a lot more comfortably. And I found 2 things that are interesting to note and important. When you put the zip tie on your grommet, make sure you leave it loose so it jiggles a little bit, and the merlins fly with it when it's better that way. They don't have to fuss with it. And the other thing is when you go to cut it off with your wire cutters, the zip tie is a little more space in there to get it without clipping that bracket on your transmitter. Because you'll clip your transmitter and break that little bracket off, and it's useless. So it's a way of saving your transmitter too, so that's important to know. Okay, go ahead. Oh yes, the ever-present English house sparrow, Passer domesticus. Now these things are actually a weaver finch. They're wicked smart. They're actually kind of fast. Certain populations or localities of house sparrows have adapted to a more open field lifestyle, and so they can really get up and fly. Now a lot of them, frequent habitations and flat silos and farms and whatnot. Some of those don't really have to fly very far, so they don't develop those powers. But the ones that have adapted to an open country lifestyle, they can challenge your merlin. So they're really good birds to hunt and good food source, and they're excellent for trapping. And in the kingdom of Merlin, sparrows are the coin of the realm. So you got to have your house sparrow gear together. So you have to know how to trap them with mist nets and funnel traps, and how to house them in your cages and what to feed them. And I call that the dicky bird infrastructure. So you got to have that. You got to have that foundation. Instead of a pigeon loft, you got a cage with some sparrows, and it's a little easier to deal with than having to clean pigeons every day. So you got to have your sparrow trip together. Go ahead. So this is Gerald and I. You can tell I'm that guy on that side, and I'm about to get bit in the finger by this female merlin just blowing out of the net here. And here's Gerald. So it's kind of like, the older generation passing the baton over to the younger generation. And so it's kind of a neat picture for that. It has a little meaning there. I guess we're talking about trapping here. Go ahead, Rob. And so in California, we trap our birds. We just drive around, look for them sitting in trees or on the ground or on berms. A lot of times you see them. And we usually use dogazas, which is a little net on a frame. And you can use BCs, and some guys in other states do, especially where it's windy. They use them because the net blows around too much away. So this is my dogaza that I set up, and yeah, I kind of adapted it a little bit for my car situation, so I can put it in my wife's car in the trunk and not have it get in the way. But this is a tube, and this is a piece of piano wire, right, hobby wire, and the tube fit the perfect sleeve fit, so I can adjust the height of it. And also these little feet right here, they swivel out, so I can adjust the width of it. So sometimes when you trap merlins, a big female comes blowing through and wrecks your net, it busts off the squares at the bottom of the net because you've got a little perimeter line. So when the net gets a little smaller, I can just make the net poles a little shorter to adjust to it, so I don't have to cut a whole new net. And I have Velcro tabs on the corners here, and I have a little perimeter line that goes around it, and it loops in over here, does like a little scrunchy hair thing that's well for my daughter, and it's got a little swivel on it, and that keeps it, kind of a little bit of a shock absorber on there. All right. So here's a picture of Mike Craigo, and Mike's a brilliant falconer. The guy's super high energy, super intelligent, very handy, and very ingenious with making really great trick gear. As a matter of fact, he made a beautiful log perch that he's donated to the raffle. So if anybody wants to get a great little log perch, I would put in for that one. Anyways, and then this is Steve Smith and Gerald. These are the younger crew. They came to us, some years back, wanted to learn what we're doing. The old guys know. So we took them on, and they gave themselves a little team name called the Wolf Pack. And they had a little wolf butt badges on their hip vests and stuff. It was really cute. And and now the old guys, we all kind of moved on. There was left, so they've kind of taken it over from us. But it was kind of nice because we kind of showed them the wheel, and they would come back every year with their newer, more improved versions of what we showed them, and taking the wheel and making it rounder. It was pretty hard. It's been really gratifying to have these guys. They turn out to be fabulous falconers. And Rob's one of them also. So what else we got here? Oh yeah. So when you train these things, really think about it. You got this beautiful little merlin sitting on top of a tree somewhere, and you're 75 yards away. He's fat as a house. And the only reason he's sitting still is he's got a full crop. He already ate a bird. Otherwise, he's too busy trying to catch one and trap it. And so you put your net down, you put a sparrow on a way behind you, you get out of the way, that thing comes forward, and they don't even have to be hungry. They just want to catch everything they can and cache it. And so the truth of it is that bird already knows. It already likes sparrows. You don't have to teach it that, right? And the long and short of it is, you just, when you train a merlin, you're just teaching it to allow you to pick it up with that bird without the net, okay? So if you can get a little merlin to be comfortable around you long enough, so that it'll catch a bird at your feet and not feel the need to fly away with it and allow you to pick it up, then you can fly it. You just put a bird on the end of the string on a fishing pole and start waving it around. Now you got this thing chasing it, and then you start making it and picking them up. One of the interesting things about merlins is they have what I would call behavioral sequences, and all falcons and hawks do. And this is really key about understanding these birds. When you look at a little falcon or any of these things, you're looking at a bird, but you don't understand necessarily the psychological architecture that's embedded and encoded in this bird. They have little behaviorals, little ritualistic behaviors and sequences that, like for instance, the pre-flight sequence. They'll kind of stretch their wings out, fan their tail, and drop a mute, and then they'll take off after something. And then they chase it down, they catch it, then they grab it, they fly to it to a safe space, they grab it by the neck, they bite the neck, they kill it, and they look around and they start plucking the head. Then they eat the skull. and they start plucking the body, and then they eat that, and then they pick their talons, they feed, they shuffle their feet to knock the feathers off, start snapping their tail, grinding their lower mandible underneath their beak, and then they puff out their chin feathers and rouse and get all puffed up and super contented, and they blow up a foot, and they're like, sweet, okay? So that whole behavioral sequence is something that you want to encourage them to do. So when you're feeding your Merlin, you want to get to the point where it does all that stuff. And at the end of that little sequence, they feel very fulfilled. And I call it, manifesting their contentment. So then you have a bird that goes through a whole sequence after you, and you go to hood the thing, and you stick the hood in front of his face, and they kind of stand back, I don't want to be hooded. And then you pull the hood away, and they look down at their feet. And you put the hood in front of them again, you're asking, how about now? And they say, no. And then you pull the hood away, and now they're bending down and picking their talons, right? And then you keep doing that. Now they're feeding. Now they're shuffling their feet, doing the Merlin dance. Now they're snapping their tail and grinding their beak. And after you do that a while, you get them to do their sequence. And after they're done with it, they're completely, what I call, manifesting their contentment. And then your bird's like completely at peace on your hand in the field. And then you just take the hood and just drop it on their head. Okay, this manifesting of their contentment is the sweet spot that you arrive at after the end of the whole hunting sequence. Okay? So they have other types of things too, but I found this extremely valuable to understand that's what the bird is trying to do and to get out of its way and maybe even encourage it to do that. And the same thing is for little accipiters too. When an accipiter bends down to pick its talons, that's how it loosens its grip on your glove. It releases their grip. So a lot of times the little accipiters, they grip your glove because they're like in a feeding frenzy. And then when you go flush something, they fly off your glove and they're hanging upside down, so they're still gripping your glove. And they're like hating life and hating you. And some falcons just try to peel them off and shake them off and put them on the ground and jump up a few times and go through that. It's disrespectful to the bird. But if you give the bird a minute and let it bend over and do its feeding ritual, then they're ready for the next flush. And you don't have these problems, and the bird starts to love you. Then a sharpshooter will take off her fist, chase the bird. If it misses, it'll just kind of boomerang, come right back to your gloves. That's where it comes from. And if it catches one, Pandora in her second season, she started just flying, every time she got a little bird, she just fly right back to my glove. I peeled it, kill it, break the neck, peel the skin, crush the skull. She'd bend over, start eating the skull and the head on this thing. And then when she was done, she'd do her feeding ritual, pick her talons, loosen her grip, feed, sit up straight, shrug her shoulders, shake her tail, and now her eyes are glittering. She's ready to chase the next bird. So this is really important for their psychology in order to really kind of relax into the thing. And then, just like a kestrel sitting on a telephone wire, dropping down on a bug or a mouse, and if it misses, it flies right back up and keeps hunting. And if it catches it, it flies right back up there and eats it. My hand is that flushing perch, the hunting perch and eating perch for my little hawk, right? So you develop that kind of behavior with them, and then all of a sudden things just go real smooth with them. You can just catch a bird after bird, they just fly right back to your glove and start eating the heads and feeding and doing it, and now they're ready for the next one. And it makes for a very smooth hawking experience. It's really nice. And if you didn't know about those behavioral sequences that are encoded in the bird, you would be insulting the bird and pissing off and they'd be hating you. And so just something to bear in mind about it all. Okay, hydration. So this is a little squid right here after a flight. I've got my water bottle, I'm squirting it. He bends over, he's like drinking off it, right? Squid was a downright day drinker. And so his thing was, he always liked to have water, so that was part of our little routine. And what I do is I take the little restrictor off the water sprayer, and that way it just comes out in droplets instead of like a jet that's squirting him in the face. And it makes it a lot easier to drink from it. Now, if you want to wet the bird down and all that, you can keep the sprayer on there and you can get them soaking wet that way. Of course, you want to spray the food. But if you want to give them water out of the water bottle to drink, and I recommend that you do because you got to hydrate these things because they dry out real fast. So constantly, I think of feeding my bird as a way to convey water into the bird. And that you trap a wild Merlin, and you wrap them up in an ava, a little corset. You bring them home, you put cuffs on them, and stand them up, get them out of the ava. The first thing they do is they just take a giant mute. It's like the size of a dinner plate. It's all water. These things drink a lot of water all the time, so you got to keep constantly hydrating the bird. Okay, So this is a bird I flew for 4 years named Squeezy. And he got his name because Nicole, she was doing her little bird talks, and at the end of every little, bird song she did a little, go ahead, Nikki, but, yeah, and that's the sound a bird makes when it's being footed to death by bird talks. So, anyway, so that's how Squeezy got his name. So, anyways, that was a pig that grew up, and Squeezy ended up catching that bird. It was the first bird up. We had a whole bunch of people out there down. It was around here actually, in Visalia, and he went over to the edge of the field and he cached it. Now merlins love to cache stuff. Little falcons, they need to cache stuff because when bad weather comes, they got to stockpile birds, like a squirrel stockpiling nuts. And so they when the barometric pressure starts to get lower, they can sense the storm is coming where they're not going to be able to hunt, and they can't go for days on end without eating because they're so small. So they stockpile birds like crazy. They start catching bird after bird and stacking them like cordwood. And so Squeezy was a crazy cache. He cached everything. So Squeezy caught the bird, cached it on the edge of the alfalfa field, and I went over and picked it up later. And then later on in the day, we're flying, he got run off by a wild merlin in the next field or two over. So it was getting on sunset, and I go over to where he cached his bird, and I'm walking along the edge of the field, kind of where I thought he cached it, and I see this little gray flash pop out of the bushes, and I thought it was like a rat or something, and it turned out it was him. He was in there looking for his bird, right? So when they start caching stuff, they really home to a certain spot. It sets up a territory for them, and they're really hard to lose because they tend to return to their cache areas. So there's that. Now, that reminds me to talk about a thing what I call the loyalty gene. Merlins tend to be, for some reason, they just come back looking for you. And they're kind of hard to lose. And we flew them without telemetry for years. And what I think it is I think of myself as providing a niche for my little falcon to be really successful. Because they're driven genetically to want to be able to just catch bird after bird after bird, not just to eat them and cache them, but also to provide them, for their nest mates and for their babies. All right, so you're providing a niche for that bird to fulfill its genetic drive, its push. And so when you do that, you create that niche, and they see you as the center of their territory, and they defend you, and they come back looking for you because you're like, the thing that makes their life successful. And it's not because they're hungry; it's because you're like their magic human fleshing animal, So I had that little jack squid, and so Squeezy was the same way. Sometimes they catch a bird at the end of the day and get chased off by another falcon or a marsh hawk or something and eat it from the eucalyptus grove like a mile away. And if you just wait around, at sunset, as soon as the sun goes over the hill, bam, there he comes and lands at my feet with a full crop. That's not a hungry bird, okay? That's a bird that's, completing its routine. And then you get them back and they take them home and they're happy to be on their perch. And I know this sounds very fairy tale-ish, but this is the reality that we experience with merlins, which is why we love them so much. They're great birds. Okay, this is Squeezy here. No, this is Squid, and you can see he's got his wings tucked up. He looked like that in the air most of the time, very high, and always flying like he was in a hurry. Yeah, and so here we got Steve and Gerald, and I can't tell who else that is. Chris Monahan, and they're going out into a field flushing birds. And this was an epic flight when the bird that was flushed, it was this long, epic roller coaster tail chasing went for hundreds of yards. And finally, right before the bird made the orchard where I was standing, Steve's bird caught it. And it was like the biggest touchdown run you've ever seen. These guys were ecstatic, and we poured Steve, we cracked his beer for him. He just turned his head backwards, he's drinking his beer, feeding us off. It was a great day. Okay, so this is Chris Allen, and Chris is like the beating heart of our falconry group here. You all know who Chris is. He's an elemental force of nature, and he's funny as can be. He holds forth and entertains us, and loves merlins. He's a fantastic merlin falconer, and he kind of paved the way for flying jacks for us. He showed, he's one of the first guys to fly jacks that I ever saw. And I go, that works a lot better than the females for us, so I'm going to go that route. So Chris has been a great guy. He's one of those guys who's just got that contagious sense of humor. You know, as soon as I hear his voice, I start talking like him. You know, it's just been a joy to have in my life, and we've had this great love of Merlins that we can share. It's just been a beautiful thing. All right, I don't know whose bird this was.
Mike Maxon's bird.
Yep, could
Is this
be.
your bird? Is that your bird? Oh, yeah, that's Tony's bird.
Okay, all right. This is all right. That's me. And yeah, boy, it's been a long time. So, anyways, I don't remember which. Oh yeah. So here's a bird. Okay, this is probably the squid. And what squid would do when another falcon came in, or another merlin he didn't want to deal with, he would come and use speed recovery, land on my head, and wait the thing out, and it would fly away, and then he'd go back up and hunt some more. So he was actually using me for protection. Okay. This is a little sickly-eyed jack. I believe Joseph Zakur is flying him now, named Little Devil. And this is a great flying little jack, and he's just you know, Joseph's had him for 5 years now, and he's just been a fantastic bird, brought us a lot of support over the years. Okay, so this spot right here, this up in Woodland, there's his 4 big alfalfa fields where we're flying our birds, and it had a bush in the middle of it, and like the crossroads of it. And every time you flushed a bird from anywhere in that field, they would all fly to this bush, you know, a couple hundred yards, and they all ended up in the bush. And when at the end of the slip, we walk over to the bush and start, and then you got this bush which is boiling with birds. Anyway, it looked like it was on fire, so we called it the burning bush. Right? And so now the burning bush has become like, you know, it's like a meta thing, where whenever we go somewhere, you know, where the birds pile into that one bush at the end of this, you know, the chase, you know, that becomes our burning bush, right? The bonus spot. So anyways, we got Rob here, the young guy. And all us old guys were back over here watching him flush, you know, kick the bush for the sparrows and putting on a show for us. Now we've endured a lot from Rob over the years, and to actually have a moment where we got some payback where he could actually, you know, flush some birds for a falcon for us, it was really nice. So Rob's over there kicking the bushes. You can see his falcon right here, right up there, upside down with his feet up, trying to grab that bird.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that. Yeah, he was flying a little Richardson jack, and it was kind of it was one of those birds that was like on the deck and flying hard. And he was a really great little energetic little guy. And so this was a chance for the old guys to enjoy some sport provided by the young guy. And Rob goes, "Hey, can you give me a hand over here?" You know, and we say, all I do is unscripted, we all yell together, "No!" It was pretty good. All right, next. So this is squid coming down, bringing the power down. Again, he was a very high flyer. Some of these jacks are, you know, 200, 300, 400 feet. He would go up there and just lived up there. You know, he turned on this, he just went up there and stayed up there all the time. No good reason for it. There's nothing I could do, one way or the other. That's just how he flew. And he was a lot of joy for us. We had him around for 8 years. And sadly, about 3 weeks ago, he got killed by a red tail. So that's taking a big chunk out of me, but it is what it is. Just fortunate to have had him for as long as we did. And yeah, he gave us a ton. So now we got merlins crabbing with each other. This happens a lot. The hardest part where I live to fly merlins, the farmers are cool, the fields are great, there's birds everywhere all winter. The hardest part is the wild merlins. They are the spoilers. Every time you try to fly your bird, another bird, wild merlin, the local guy comes in and tries to beat your bird up and drive it away. And that's the killer for our sport. So what you want is a merlin, particularly the jack if you're flying them, to have an alpha attitude. You want him to defend you and drive the other jack away and be a bigger jerk than the wild one is. And what I found was that the more successful your jack is, the better you are at providing a niche for him to be successful in flush birds he can catch a lot, the more he will value you as a flushing servant, right? And the more he will defend you from the wild merlins. So if you're flushing birds that are just flying straight up past your merlin, they're super hard to catch, and he's not catching that many, he's going to start to look at you and go, I think I'll go wait on over this marsh hawk. You know, and if a wild merlin comes in and you know, drives him off, he may go, this isn't really worth defending. But if you're doing your job, and sometimes I was really wondering, what can I do to get my bird to push back? So I just started flushing, sparrows in fields that he could catch them pretty easy with the covers low, where he's catching 3, 4, and 5 of them every hunt. And then from doing that, then he got more, invested in our future together, because he saw it as a way to, this enlightened self-interest that's involved here. And so I was able to mitigate some of him being chased off and me having to track him a couple miles to go find him after being run out. And so it had a lot to do with how successful he was and how valuable I made myself to him. Okay, this looks like somebody's little jack here. This is Chris's bird. Is that Bingo?
Chris, is that Bingo?
Looks like him.
Yeah, Chris had this little jack named Bingo. He just loved him. Flew heavy, always hungry no matter what weight. And it was just a super dynamic, hard hitting, brought a lot of power down with his chases. And it was a great bird for Chris to end on, because Chris then moved to Tennessee. But he's back. Just when we thought he got out, we pulled it back. So, okay, what else we got here? So this is Bob Helson. Bob Helson is the guy who shows up at a field. He's got a great flying little jack. He's got a terrestrial hybrid just slaying ducks, and he's got a little goshawk that just was pulling ducks in off of ditches in fabulous style. And he's just super relaxed and nonchalant about it all. Oh yeah, no problem. Just the easiest going guy, super alpha, super relaxed. And he's the guy that we're like, you like Bob. He's a fabulous hit maker and just super accomplished falconer, and we're looking at him. Okay, releasing your Merlin. Well, at the end of the season, you got a Merlin. You gotta ask yourself, am I gonna molt this thing? And so you ask yourself some questions like, am I gonna get a better one next year? And if this one's kind of like, I have to go chase after him. He's not that high a flyer. He doesn't hood good. He doesn't cash. He's not an easy keeper at home. He gets twisted up on his gear all the time. You might say, I'll try my luck next year. But if you got a really good one, and one that makes it easy for you, like when he takes a sparrow up into a tree, instead of eating it, he flies down to the ground right next to you where you can pick him up. And a lot of them do that. It's just crazy. Why would they do that? But they do. You're like, well, I can work with that. If you got one that comes back looking for you, either right away or at least at sunset, I could make a relationship with this bird that'll stick, and have it develop. So if it's pretty easy and it's an easy keeper, and some of them they hate your guts, and some of them love you, and some of them act like they're in love with you, but they're embarrassed to admit it. Yeah. And so, you just kind of have to, just kind of weigh it out and decide if I'm going to find if it's worth keeping or not. So some of them aren't particularly enjoyable. So you have to decide whether you can let it go or not. And then when you do, you want to give it some time so it can reacclimate. You let it go in the field you're hunting. You build its weight up, keep hunting with it over the course of a few days, let the birds where it needs it. And let it go early enough so they can catch that jet stream and move up north without having issues of being able to make the journey. Okay, you want to let it go into so lots of birds around moving north so that it can just get back into its flow and get back into its seasonal groove. Okay, when I think about where to go with Merlin Hawken, this is a bird I call Freebird. Freebird is a wild female Merlin that I made friends with out there. She would come and wait on with my peregrine tersel and hunt competitively the same birds I was flushing for my peregrine. And so next year she came back and I started flipping sparrows and starlings for her, because every time you show up in the field, here she is, And so I just started flipping birds for her, and I started flipping birds as she was climbing away into the wind, just like a regular falcon. And next thing I know, I got a high-flying female Merlin, and every time I go out there, here she comes, right? And no matter what time of the day, morning, noon, or night, she get out in the field, step out of the car, wait, put my hand up, all of a sudden, way on the horizon, here she comes. And we did this repeatedly for 6 years. Caught lots of birds with her. She waited on as good as any waiting on falcon that I've ever had. And she was fabulous. She would flunk with full prop and catch birds and fly over to the rice fields and cache and come back for more. And it was fantastic. And if I happened to be flying at the one far end of her territory, I put my Peel's carousel up, and she'd see my falcon and come over to him. She knew I was there too. I mean, it was just a weird deal, but the thing about the Freebird falcon is you can do that, And it's not that unique, because Dave Salem and Joe Salem and Chris Allen, they had me and sister, a female Merlin that they flew. That was our community hawk that lived out there. It was a wild Merlin that they flew, and they would hunt with them, cooperatively. And some other people have done it too. I've heard stories. So I think if anything ever went bad or they took it away from us, if you can catch sparrows and go out there and start flipping, chumming a wild Merlin, you can get really good Merlin falconry with a wild bird that you never have to take home. Oh, so this is our, let's call this, this is a term that Chris came up with. We call it the common camaraderie. Yeah, and so, we learn to hawk together. You can take a big piece of alfalfa with sparrows all over it. You can hawk like 3 or 4 or 5 Merlins in the same field, just keep moving to different corners. And so we developed this thing where we drive around and we find the birds and we fly our birds together, and we've got lots of laughs and enjoyment. And it's this bond that we got from doing all this stuff together. This has been tremendous, and I just feel so deeply fortunate to have had these guys in my life to share it with and be part of our group and stuff. It's just been tremendously gratifying. So we got David Barrios over there, we got Rob, we got Jeff Higgins, we got Joe Salem, and there's me. There's Gabor. Gabor is here today, and he's from Hungary, another Merlin guy. And I tell my buddies, I go, he's just like us, but he's worse. So we're all a bunch of wingbeat junkies. We got Chris Allen, there's Dave Roth, he was there, and we got John, Milan. And so, we got a bunch of Merlin guys here, and yes, there you are. And I believe we have Mickey Predator picture, so anyways, yep. So here's the boys, we're all kneeling down. You want to keep a low profile when you got a bird in the air, because you're literally standing in a field surrounded by a flock of very nervous birds. And they want to fly away. And the only thing keeping them from flying away is that your falcon's up in the air, keeping pressure on the birds down on the ground. They don't want to fly with that falcon in the air. So when you flush a bird, your falcon does a stoop and just roller coaster across the field like this. And we all kneel down, so we show a lower profile so that we don't intimidate the birds. We're like right next to them. You don't want to move your feet, you don't want to say nothing, you don't want nothing, And so you get down low, you get a low profile, you crouch down, and when the bird comes back after missing, then you can stand up again and wait for the bird to ring up and gain some altitude and start flushing again. Okay, now we're flying Gerald's bird. That's Gerald in the middle. That's the young bud. There's Chris. That's me. Okay, so here's Chris, and he's got himself a little musket he intermuted. And it was such a great little show. We had to put that in there for Chris here. So, go ahead there. So here we're sitting here around the tailgate. Chris is holding forth, telling the stories that are impossible not to laugh at. And Chris is funny. He makes sense of humor. He kind of feels you when he hits something funny. You can feel you laugh, and then he'll just go in there and start sucker punching you until you can't even breathe. And it's just one of the funniest people I've ever met in my life. So we were just trying to withstand one of Chris's stories without falling off. So we got Chris here, Jeff, and me, and Bob Bells. This is the gang, and Ginger, of course, the dog. So good times. There's Gerald, and Gerald's a fabulous falconer. Oh my God, he's just he's really taken it to another level. So he's very patient, very methodical, and sees the big picture. And he's got the best land falcon in the valley as far as I'm concerned. It's a little Merlin Bonnie. And I'm just my hats off to Gerald and Steve and Rob and all these young guys who are taking the wheel and working around it. I feel like our sport's in good hands. There's Chris. Here we are sitting around in between.
Steve's listening to whatever you have to say.
Somebody's talking. There's Joe Salem, one of his little guys, and he looks kind of young. Yeah. And there's Rob and there's Mike Maxey, and Mike was always great for laughs too, and Rob too. Yeah. Okay, this is Mike Maxey's little Jack. This was a great flying little bird, real snappy, pretty high flying, and just had it going on. One of those high vibration Merlins. I mean, all Merlins are pretty high vibration, but some can just buzz like a hummingbird. And this was one of those. There's Gerald releasing, was that Messi? Looks like he's interviewed in this picture. Yeah, that's a great fun little jack. I think it was Gerald's first jack, yeah. It looks like he's doing a little Napoleonic gesture there. And we got Steve Smith. Oh, this is when he caught that bird on going into the orchard there. And I'm kind of standing there, all kind of congratulating himself, trying to build him up, you know. Oh, okay, this is a great story. So, see the joy of absolute elation on Chris's face? We had our first Visalia meeting, right? And we're flying over there for 41 in Kansas, and it's some big open fields. And this is a bird that he had interviewed, a female Merlin called Cat. He was kind of a tweener. He didn't know if it was a jack or a female, so he called it this kind of in-between kind of name. And anyway, we're flying her, and this is like before we were using telemetry on these things. And she takes off, chasing a bird, and disappears. It was like Wednesday morning, she's gone. And then she was gone the whole week and into the weekend. And finally, it was Saturday night, right before we got to go back and get clean up and go to the banquet. And we get to this field, we're going commando style, so I go straight, these guys go to the right, we're going to try to cover the perimeter of this field, look for birds, and as efficient as we can. And as I'm driving at the far end of the field, I see this Merlin coming, just clipping diagonal from my corner all the way to the opposite corner where they were. And this thing, I almost ran it over, it flew right in front of my right passenger wheel coming in, going across the field hard, right at us. So I get on the phone, I go, hey, incoming, you got one coming. These guys look up, and because Steve was getting ready to fly his bird, and Rob jumps out with his camera and sees it coming and starts, clicking them off, right? Because he's got one of those machine gun cameras that takes like 30 frames a second. And it says, right? And the thing flies by. So he looks at the camera, and you can see it's got cuffs on, it's packed, right? But she just buzzed it. She didn't even stop and say hi or nothing. It's not like watching your girlfriend drive by and somebody else with a red Corvette. Just like hair on, So anyway, Chris gets out his lure and whatever it is, he's swinging a dead bird on the string like we do, and just doing this, and all of a sudden Pat came back. But Pat's wild now because she's been out for almost a week. So Pat's coming out, she's kind of helicoptering down, and just kind of up like this, and going, oh geez, I hope she lands. And then she touches down, she bounces back up, and she's doing this about 5, 6 times. Finally, she comes in flight, settles down, lands on his hand. He's got it like this. He's like, it's like this heroic Iwo Jima scene, where he's just doing this pose as he does. And he's got Pat on his hand, and she came back. It was like the perfect closing to a beautiful weekend. And it was just a great experience, So that was like a huge win for us, that Chris got right at the last hour of the last day. So this is one of our pearls. I don't know whose it is. It's probably mine, actually. And she's whacking it here. She likes them. And so these pearls are interesting. We kind of went through this whole thing with, we flew peregrines on the little birds, and we flew the merlins, and then we got into merlins, because we wanted a female-sized merlin that would wait on good. Then we got into barberries and red napes, and now we're back into merlins again. So anyway, so this is my little Merlin. I think it's her Morticia, and she likes those a lot. So that's her giving, give one a little love tap there.
I think that might be 5.
That might be 5. Hey Steve, did you put your telemetry on his left leg? Steve, wake up, Steve.
Sure.
Was that Clyde?
It is. Looks like it.
All right, well, I'll give it to him. I don't care. It's all good. Now this is Morticia.
Yes.
This is my bird, and she's on a dove, and this was a few weeks ago or a month ago or whatever it was, when it was in season. So. So this is, more of the crew. We got Raymond and Randy West and Joe Salem and Nick and Coretta and Mike Maxey and me and then Dave Riles and his beautiful daughter, I forget her name, and Chris Allen and Dave Roth and Rob and his dog Ginger. And it was nice to see everybody out there. And then here's Joseph. Here's like the new Southern California, Merlin upstart.
Yeah.
And Joseph, he's a great guy. He's got a great flying little blackjack right now. He's just killing it. So, we love that. And so here's more of the boys. Of course, Rob giving Gerald love.
Yeah.
you know, and, yep, so that's us. And so you can see the common camaraderie is good. So we had a great party out here for the years, and we've been really fortunate to have each other. And so there it is. That's our story. All right, so if you have any quick questions, and hopefully not too embarrassing ones, I'll be happy to try and answer them for you. Yes, sir.
Why is it you prefer jazz?
Well, I'll tell you a quick little story. I did it on that little video in case you haven't seen it, but I was flying my little female Sharpie one morning, and she disappeared in the morning mist chasing a bird, and I never saw her anymore. Right? So it happens, you know, I had years with her, you live under the tyranny of the little city, it takes you so long. So, anyways, I'm out looking for her, and I see a bush in the middle of this airport that I was flying into, just growing out of the tarmac, and it's caged with little sparrows in it, right? And they're packed in there. Trying to stay awake, it's all right. I usually fall asleep with these things too. And so somebody wake me up if I fall off here. So, and they're stuck in there tight. I walk right up to them, they're not budging. I go, okay, obviously my bird is right here. It's got these birds pinned in this bush. They don't want to fly, so they just have to fly across the cement to get to it. So I look up and I see a little blue jack, Coleberry's jack, sitting on top of a snag of a big black walnut tree. I go, cool, get to see a flight, you know. So I picked up an old piece of 2x4 and I picked this thing up and I whack the bush, right? So it's a poison on bush. And all these sparrows go popping out in all directions, and here comes this jack climbing off the top of this 8-foot branch, and then gets over the sparrows, and whoosh, such a hard freaking, you know, like a crack of a whip, bam, like that. The sparrows are down to a huge turn, they're chattering and, you know, crapping all over themselves and screaming. They fly right between my pant legs, slap my pant legs, going back into the bush, right? And the merlin goes straight up on its tail, does a couple circles and flies back to the tree, right? Now he lands on the tree, comes snapping around like a needle on a compass. He's like looking at me real stern, like he's daring me to jaywalk at the top, you know? So I go, well, cool. So I pick up my stick, you know, I whack the bush, here comes the merlin, and he does his dive, the sparrows also blasting back into the bush, the merlin goes right up its tail, he starts spinning tight circles over about 125 feet, kind of sideways, you know, really intense, like, you know, like drain, you know. He's like got his one eyeball looking down on me, and I look up at him, he looks at me, I pick up a stick, he starts to stoop before I hit the bush, okay? That's why I fly jacks, because they learn that fast, okay? Any other yes? I'm sorry, no, that's okay. Yes, sir.
Do you find the character differences between the Sukiai and the Columburus,
You know, the characteristics of the physical morphology or their behavioral?
the behavioural?
Okay, the Columburus bird is a generalist. They, in my opinion, this is my feelings about it. They encounter a lot of different type of habitat and a lot of different type of birds that, you know, during the course of their migrations. So they're highly adaptable, okay? Now, and then the Sukulias are a little bit more specialized, and then the Richardsons are extremely specialized because they're a grassland bird, so they're very habitat specific. You'll see them in prairie grass, where you would expect to see one, but you usually don't see them anywhere else. Columburises you see everywhere, and Sukulias, they were also fairly generalized, but they're more coastal. But you do see them, they do go into east, kind of like the eastern western United States. You know, so, you know, Rob was saying that, you know, they're nicer birds, you know, because they're Canadian. And I just say the reason why we like them so much is because they're really hungry. So they're easier to trap. Anyways, they're starving. No, I'm kidding. But anyways, the Columburus birds are very adaptable. They learn quickly. And your standard issue of little GI, little brown jack is usually the best merlin you could ever want to have. Occasionally you get a really killer black one that flies great, but a lot of them don't want to fly at all. They just want to sit there on a bush or something. They want to see the money first. So you got to flush something before you get them in the air. Whereas a brown jack typically just goes up and stays up there until they flush something. And the Richardson's jacks can be very aerial, but they've got their own mindset. It's like they have these big plans and they don't include you. So the Richardson jack tends to fly a lot bigger and use up more airspace, more of the field. And for some reason, we don't see a whole lot of Richardsons in this part of California. We just see them on, they come down on the other side of the Sierras, on the eastern side. And they migrate down into the deserts of Southern California, but occasionally we do see them here in the valley. In 30-something years of trapping merlins, I trapped, at least a dozen a year, just for, without trying too hard. I've trapped 2 Richardsons in 30 years, out of hundreds, so, but they have a different mentality, a different kind of style about them, softer feathers, lighter wing loading, and for some reason, when you put a columbaris, they're much choppier, and they just really get on the deck and dig hard, and they chase these sparrows, and sparrows usually will try to keep a low profile when they're flying. Whereas the Richardsons, for some reason, would get underneath the sparrows and force them up. And you get these big aerial flights that use up a lot of airspace on the same prey that would normally never get that high in the air with a columbaris spray. So it turned out to be some really great falconry. The one I flew did not wait on with much urgency. There were times when he flew really high, and there were times when he would just float around at 30 feet. He didn't see the need for it. But when a bird was flush, he had the most intense pursuit drive and intense moves within moves. Like it was just mob stuff. And it was just really fun bird to fly. He chased birds 1,000 yards over to an orchard out of sight, and they come ripping back and just do it again. So he was really a great bird. And turned out to be a pretty friendly, amenable little guy, and liked him a lot. So there's that.
Thanks very much.
Any other questions? Oh, yes, sir. Bam. What is a red-necked Shaheen? A red-necked Shaheen is a light picture of the Barbary falcon that I had up there, but it's a high elevation adaptation of a lower kind of desert bird. So it's a peregrine that is a smaller bird that is adapted to like the Himalayas, where they have a lot of down on them so they can handle cool temperatures. So if you want to fly a little falcon that flies around 430 grams or so, a red-necked Shaheen is great if you live where it's cold, and a Barbary is great if you live where it's hot. But they're both about the same size. Their red-necks are a little bit more robust than the Barbaries. I would say, comparing a Barbary to a red-neck is like comparing a commie to a racing pigeon. The Shaheens are just beefier and rougher and a little cruder, kind of like a columbaris compared to a Richardson. Okay, any other questions? Yes, sir.
You ever use backpacks on them instead of light mounts?
People do, it's just so invasive to me, I just can't bear it, And I've had a handful of birds given to me that just wouldn't fly for the falconers. And I get them, and they're wearing track packs, and it's digging into the birds, and their keel has a dent in it, and these birds are just like really stressed from it. I cut these things off, and within a week, they're flying great. So I'm not a big fan of the backpack, plus it looks like you've got this big old scuba tank on your bird's back, and it's just so unsightly, I just can't do it. But, and then the birds that sit there kind of disheveled looking like they got the flu, right? It's just not for me. But, I just really kind of get off on the perfection of them. And the track back kind of diminishes that for me. And, any other questions? I mean, you can do it, people do it, if you want to take it that far, but, birds are ephemeral, birds, it's like you just keep it with a real light hand, just expect to lose them and train and catch another one and train it up. And a lot of times they surprise you and stick around for years. All right? We good?
Good job, Pete.